Hello, so today I'd like to share with you 2 parenting tips, which even if you're not a parent, they can still apply in some ways, because adults are really just big kids. They can maybe apply to yourself or any other children that you look after. And also a playlist that I've made, a good resource for children, a movie which I found helpful, some simple living thoughts, 2 of my go-to verses, and a recipe. Okay, so the first parenting tip is from a preacher from South Africa that I heard quite a few years ago. I'm not sure if I was even a parent at the time, but it sounded funny to me, and so I still remember it. And he said we can't expect our children to be monks and nuns. And he went on to explain that we can't just say no to all the bad things without replacing the bad things with good things. We can't just expect them to have nothing, to have no, like we say no to bad books or bad movies or bad music or bad places to go, but we can't just say no, otherwise we're really expecting them to be monks and nuns. He said we need to hunt high and low to find good things to replace the bad things. So we need to look high and low to find good books that they can read, and, well, you don't have to have movies, but if you want movies, to look for good movies, to find good activities and good hobbies and good music, good things that they can have. I think an example is like if you plant a garden, you don't just pull out all the weeds, you plant good things in there. Otherwise you just have an empty garden that's got nothing in there. So I think it's the same for our children, even for ourselves. We can't just take away all the bad things. We need to fill the gaps in with good things. And we might need to spend money or time to find those things for our children. I know my parents are a good example of this. They went to a lot of effort to find good things for us, to find good books and good movies and good things that we could go to. And a second tip, kind of along the same lines, but that is to encourage the good in our children. So it's easy to just jump on the negative things. It's easy to just jump on the bad things that they do or the naughty things and to correct them, but sometimes we have to remind ourselves to look for the good things that they do and praise them when you see them doing something good, when they're being helpful, or when they're doing something without being told, or when they're playing nicely, or when they're looking after their little sisters or brothers. Don't just try to pull out the weeds, try to look for the flowers. So to catch them doing good and not just catch them doing bad things. And I know if I'm encouraged for something good that I do, it encourages me to do it again, to do more. And it's the same with kids. If you praise them for the good things they do, it will make them want to do them more. It can be very discouraging if you only get told what you're doing wrong and never get told what you are doing right. So part of the reason that I do share Christian movies is that, like what I said about how we need to provide good things for our children, I like it when people share good movies with me that they've found, because otherwise, not all videos are good, even Christian ones. And if somebody doesn't tell you about it, you've got to look for yourself. And it's nice when you just get told of one that you don't need to go, you don't need to go find, if somebody just shows it to you. So anyway, I have shared quite a few videos over the last few months, so I have made them into a playlist on my channel, and it's called Favorite Movies. So I've made it public, so everybody should be able to see it. So if you go onto the playlist on my channel, there should be one called Favorite Movies, and I've just put all the videos there together. And as I share new ones, I will just add them on there so that they're all in one place and they're easy to find. And I also might do one for sermons. I haven't shared many sermons, but I think I have shared a few, so I might make a playlist for favourite sermons as well. And if I ever share music in the future, I'll make a playlist for that too, just so they're easy to find. And another thing for children, since I was talking about finding good things for your children, one thing that I find really good is Keys for Kids. You've probably heard of it, but if not, they are devotional stories for children. Our ones are very well loved. They're pretty much fallen apart. So they have a short devotional story which is based on a Bible verse. So this one here is called Cat in the Window, and the Bible verse is be content with such things as you have, and the theme is about being content. So it has a little story, and it's kind of like an object lesson made into a story to help the children understand and to remember it. So these children are wanting to they're looking at flyers from a shop and they really want some of the things in there, and yet they know that they can't have them because their mum can't afford them right now, and yet they're looking and whining and wanting them. And then they see the cat who's looking at birds outside the window, who's trying to catch them through the window, and they think the cat is so silly because there's no way he can get to the birds out the window. And the mum said, well, you guys are just as silly because you're looking at the flyers, wanting things that you can't have, so you're really being just like the cat. And so they could see from that picture that it was pointless to think about all the things they want that they can't have, just like the cat can't have the birds out the window. So it has a little story, and then it has an application down here. And it also has a Bible reading up here, so if you want to read the Bible, read a little passage that goes along with the theme. This morning, usually I read Bible stories to the children at breakfast, but this morning I was running a little bit late, so we just read one of these stories, and it was about how Christians are teammates. And so it was a story about a boy on I think it was a football team, and how he was talking about one of the other players, which he didn't actually really like that much, but because he was on the same team, he was praising this other player because of the good things he'd done in the game. So that one was about how if we're a Christian, then other Christians are on the same team as us, so we shouldn't be picking on them and fighting with each other because we're on the same team, which is a very good thing to remember. So those are Keys for Kids, and there is a website which you can actually read those stories online, and I think that actually you can listen to them being read out as well. So if you are interested, you don't actually have to buy the books, you can read them online. I think you can even get an email every day with a story for that day, because they're ones for like every day of the year. Okay, so a movie which I watched back when we were in Holland about, 3-4 years ago now. And one night Johan was out, I think, visiting his family, and one of my sisters had sent me a movie that she liked. And it's on the story of Helen Keller and the teacher that came to teach her how to, communicate. So the story is about Helen Keller's teacher and how she teaches Helen. And yet for the parents it's very difficult because they've kind of turned her into a spoiled brat without meaning to, because they don't know how else to raise her. And so, for example, if she gets all upset and naughty, they'll give her a lolly to calm her down. Whereas the teacher said, why are you rewarding her for doing something wrong? And so the teacher had to be really strict on her so that she could teach her. And yet for the parents, that was really hard. So it was really tough love. And for me, I found it helpful with Lydia, because with Lydia, you need a lot of consistency. And sometimes you do feel mean. And so for me, it was very helpful to see that sometimes love has to be tough. So for me, that was really helpful. But it is a nice movie. So I will link that down below, and I'll put it on the playlist as well. So some simple living thoughts. So one tip is to get rid of things continually. I find it very overwhelming to declutter my whole house all in one go. So if you just constantly get rid of things, just keep an eye out for things you don't need anymore, for clothes that don't fit anymore, or books you don't read anymore, or even just rubbish around the house, then it's not so overwhelming. Because if you try to do it all at once, it can be quite stressful, because you're worried whether it's a lot of decisions to make all at once. So if you don't do well with trying to do a whole lot of things all at once, it can be helpful to just continually get rid of things. Just regularly take things to the op shop, regularly look for things you can throw away or that you don't need anymore. And one principle that can be good is if you get a new one, one in, one out. So if you get a new book, get rid of an old book. Or if you get, to replace things rather than just getting more and more and more and more. Of course, if you don't have enough of something, you don't want to do that. But if you already have enough, say if you already have enough clothes or enough children's toys, it can be a good principle. If you get something new, then to replace it, to get rid of something else, so then you don't end up with heaps and heaps and heaps. Another thought is, if it broke, would I replace it? Do I like that thing enough to actually go and replace it? Say if my house burnt down, or something like that happened, would I actually want it enough to go and replace it? Because sometimes we have things that we have just because we have them, and yet if something happened, then we wouldn't even miss them, and we definitely wouldn't want to go and buy a new one. So that's a good tip to remember. And another kind of goal that I have is that if I have to shift in the future, I want to only have to pack up, clean, and shift. So I don't want to have a huge sort out and go through all the stuff in my house and it be a huge big job. I want to live so that if I ever have to shift, it would just be a matter of packing up what we have, because I want to only have the things that we need and use and like, that we would want to take with us. Then it wouldn't be such a huge job. So that's a good goal to have in mind. If I had to shift, I only want to have to pack up, clean the house, and shift, and not have to have a huge big sort out and clean up and declutter. So those are some thoughts that I find helpful just to keep it from being so overwhelming. So 2 verses that I find very helpful. One of them is one that you can go back to every day. It is a promise from the Bible, and it's a verse that you can use every single day over and over again. And that is James 1. James 1 verses 5 to 7. Well, mainly verse 5, but it says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. So it is a promise that if we need wisdom and we ask God for wisdom in faith, that he will give us wisdom. And yeah, we all do lack wisdom. Every day we need wisdom for a parent to look after our children, if we're married to be a good wife or a husband. Whatever we do, we need God's wisdom. I have a little calendar with a verse for every day, and today's one is Psalm 25 verse 9, which says, the meek will he guide in judgment, and the meek will he teach his way. And I think meekness is similar to humility. So it says he guides the meek and he teaches the meek his way. And I think it takes humility to know that we need God's help, that we need wisdom. We're not going to pray for wisdom if we don't think we need it, and yet we do need it. And if we do pray and ask God for wisdom, he will give us wisdom. It's a promise. So I find that that's a Bible verse that I go back to often, and it's one you kind of need to remind yourself of often, that if we don't know what to do, ask God. He will give us wisdom and help. And in a paraphrase, part of that verse says, he's always ready to give a bountiful supply of wisdom to all who ask him. We have to ask, and we have to believe that he will answer. So, and another verse, which is one that I go back to a lot too, is 1 Corinthians 15 verse 58. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. For as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. And for one thing, it's a promise that what we do for God is not a waste of time. It's not in vain. But it's also a command. And actually, one time I had quite a busy week, and because I have blogs, so around this time I started to try to be committed. So I've been blogging for, I don't know, like 9-10 years or so, but there are times that I just don't do much on it. Sometimes I only put things on there when I have something specific in my mind to blog about. But at this point in time, I was starting to try to be committed to it and to try to do it regularly. And so one day I had this busy week, and I remember praying, oh, do I need to do something on my blog this week? Can I just skip it? And because, I have a busy week and it takes time to type and to blog. So anyway, I specifically prayed that. And I think it was that night, Johan was reading the Daily Light before we went to bed. And you know how sometimes verses just really hit you or kind of jump out at you? Or he was doing this reading and it had that verse. Be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. And for me, that was just an answer to my question that I did need to do it. I did need to be consistent and committed to it. And I know there are always times that we sometimes need to have a rest and we sometimes need to take a break. But we also need to be committed to whatever God has given us to do. And yeah, there's a promise that our labor is not in vain in the Lord. And another way of saying it is, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourself fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labour in the Lord is not in vain. So those are two of my go-to verses. This week I had a bag of lemons which somebody gave to me, so I made 2 lemon loaves with some of the lemons. Today's Saturday and Johan is going to work on the kitchen, so I started early baking. Sometimes a bit tricky to juggle baking and working on the kitchen, so I made 2 lemon loaves, which I will leave the recipe. There's a lemon syrup loaves that are really nice. You can also make them as muffins. And I made a double lot of my pizza dough, put some seeds in there, and made some nice buns for lunch, and I will show you what the kitchen looks like. So he's taken out all the jib walls and on the ceiling, so it actually looks worse, but it is progress. And we've had, the oven is over here because that's where it's going to go. We got the kitchen rewired this last week, so that's why there are wires everywhere. And we had to put these cupboards over here in the dining room. So Johan's going to, I think, fill in some of these walls today. He's just going to pick up some jib. This is the progress that Johan made on Saturday afternoon. That is this part of the ceiling, probably half of the kitchen ceiling.